Music intertwined, melodies and harmonies combined, a duet. One might think of this as a solely human capability, to create music of many voices, for what animal would even be capable enough to think of producing sound with another? Well, as it turns out, humans here are on the losing end. Birds can harmonize alone. With themselves? Let me explain. Hello, and welcome back to the Bird Encyclopedia. I'm of course your host, Heinrich Schmuel, but you can call me the Birdman, and in this episode, we will continue to explore the audible world of birds, and specifically today, be learning about the world's original chamber music. Before anything, however, it is most important that we establish how exactly birds produce noise. Just as humans possess a larynx, which contains the vocal cords, as their vocal organ, birds have a syrinx. It is located at the base of the trachea, which is the windpipe that directs air into the lungs, but also through this very voice box. The organ is a combination of tubes, cartilages, and most importantly, membranes and muscles in which to control them, either by easing or increasing their tension. Similar as to how the vibration of vocal cords aids in the sound creation in humans, the vibration of these membranes due to air currents creates the voice of the bird. Interestingly, the syrinx is also split, and both of these sides can operate independently, allowing for some fascinating function. This will become important later on, so keep it in the back of your mind. As for the evolutionary history of this body part, the first ever syrinx in the documented fossil record belongs to a certain Antarctic seafaring bird, Virgavis ea, which was alive somewhere around 66 to 68 million years ago, an ancient relative to the group of birds that now includes geese, swans, and ducks. On top of this, and most interestingly, is the fact that the syrinx has only ever developed through evolution once and only once, and that would be with birds. All other terrestrial vertebrates instead possess a larynx, even crocodilians possessing the most rudimentary of vocal cords. This isn't to say, though, that there are not exceptions within the avian world. New World vultures, of which include the king, black, and turkey vultures, as well as the Andean and California condors, lack this musical organ, and instead communicate in hisses and grunts. But for today, that is besides the point. We'll be exploring birds that can actually sing. And now, since we've established how they do it, let's start actually talking about some birds and their ensemble skills. First of all, the complex ritual of duetting, an act of courtship and pair bonding between breeding birds and their mates. One of, if not the most impressive examples of this fascinating behavior would belong to the plain-tailed wren, just one species known to partake in the act of antiphonal duets. But first, some background. These tropical birds belong to parts of the Andes which pass through countries including Colombia, Ecuador, as well as northern Peru, inhabiting the subtropical to tropical montane forests located there. It is shaped similarly to the other New World wrens, but its coloration, though still dull, is distinct, having a mostly rufous, aka reddish-brown, body, and a white, black, and gray striped head. Rather handsome if I do say so myself. But we're not here for bird stats, we're here for what it's famous for, the alternating patterns displayed in these birds' duets. Plain-tailed warbler pairs will synchronize in a complex song, which will go back and forth between the two birds in rapid succession. But rapid is not an adjective worthy of describing this act, for these birds complete this synchronization within millisecond precision. Each of these millisecond-long syllables, which mind you alternate between each different bird, then come together to form what seems to be a cohesive song, produced by a singular voice. But how do they do it? Well, not only is it this bird's incredible hearing, no, its brain is actually hardwired with a neural inhibitor when its partner is singing. So, as it detects the signals from its ears to its brain caused by its partner's responses, it will automatically prevent itself from making a noise. But enough of me talking. Don't you want to hear this incredible behavior for yourself? Well, here you go. And isn't that amazing? It sounds just as if it were a singular bird. But what if it was? Remember earlier how I mentioned that the syrinx, that bird vocal organ, is split into two parts? and how this bifurcation can make each side capable of operating independently of each other? Well, as it turns out, that means not only that incredibly distant note changes are possible in matters of pitch, but more importantly for us, that a bird can duet with itself. This is called an internal duet and is present in a couple of species, one of which being the wood thrush. For some context, this bird is a distinct member of the genus Turdidae, found across eastern, North, Central, and South America. Its preferred habitat includes mature and deciduous mixed forests, where these thrushes will feast on mostly invertebrates including, but not limited to, caterpillars, spiders, flies, millipedes, beetles, ants, woodlice, snails, you get the idea. They'll even eat salamanders if they get the chance to. That's not to say they're all carnivorous though, as they will gladly partake in their local fruit selections, for example, including things like dogwood, elderberry, or pokeweed. As for their appearance, these birds are quite bold-looking, with a reddish-brown back, nape, and crown, pink legs, as well as white underparts with conspicuous black speckling all over it. All this painted on a frame with the shape of a scaled-down American robin. But what does it sound like? How do the two sides of the syrinx operate separately? Well, each of these sides possess their own set of both membranes and also muscles. As for the sound, it's exactly as one might imagine, a combination of pitches with a single voice. By my descriptions wouldn't do it justice. Just take a listen for yourself. It's quite hauntingly beautiful, isn't it? And a great way to end off this episode. But not before my honorable mention, but a sad one at that. Last seen 40 years ago, last heard 38. Its fate was similar to many of its other extinct Hawaiian comrades, due to the introduction of alien predators onto the isolated islands, mosquito-borne diseases, as well as habitat destruction. This final bird is the Kauai o'o, along with its final words. This bird was an inhabitant of the island of Kauai, for which it was named, and preferred lobelia species and lapa-lapa trees when foraging, as it was a honey-eater species, and these plants would provide nectar. In addition to this, they would also occasionally partake in fruit and invertebrates. Their appearance is what one might expect from a honey-eater, with the long, slightly down-curved bill, plump body, and sharp wings. Its plumage was a slaty gray color mostly, transitioning to more of a rufous on the rump and flanks. Throat and breast were black with white barring. There was a small tuft of gray feathers on the base of the wing, and the legs and beak were a solid black. In males though, the leg feathers were colored a brilliant yellow. But, for what we've been waiting for, the call. These birds would duet with their partners, though, as opposed to rapid back and forths, like the aforementioned wrens, they partook in a more traditional call and response. But I did say these birds went extinct, and so, to end this episode on a solemn note, and I dearly apologize for this, but here's the call of the final remaining Kauai o'o, awaiting a response from a female that no longer exists. How haunting a melody, and what a shame for its extinction. I suppose this will be a fitting place to wrap up this episode, so until next time, I hope you learned something new about bird calls, sounds, and duets specifically, and I'll be looking forward to you tuning in to the next episode of the Bird Encyclopedia. This is your host, the Birdman, logging off.